I was born on Monday morning, October 15th, 1872, at 9 o'clock. The hour set for the convening of the circuit court, of which my father was judge. Father used to laugh and tell how the opening of the court was delayed so he could be on hand to greet me. Consequently, as he always said, I began my career by keeping gentlemen waiting.
Edith Bolling, seventh child of William and Sally Bolling, would become the 35th First Lady of the United States. And no one would be more surprised than herself. Her family moved to Wytheville in 1866, after the family plantation in Bedford was lost. Her father joined the law practice of former General William Terry, and the family moved upstairs over this commercial storefront to make their home.
We were a large household with many guests at meals. I now wonder how Mother, with so many little children, with untrained and indolent servants, and the long division of a slender purse, ever got things done. But bless her heart, she was always equal to it, and was as young and gay as we were.
The Bolling family was one of Virginia's first families. Edith's great-great-grandmother was the sister of Thomas Jefferson, and she was related to Martha Washington and Robert E. Lee. She was a direct descendant of Pocahontas. But the family's wealth had been lost in the Civil War, and Edith grew up in modest circumstances. Up to 20 family members lived here at times, including Edith's ailing grandmother, the matriarch of the family, who kept 26 canaries on the back porch. Edith became her grandmother Bolling's companion, caring for her day and night and learning from her how to read, write, sew, embroider, and fit clothing. At 15, she studied music at Martha Washington College in Abingdon for a year, then spent another year at the Powell School in Richmond. Her parents decided, with 3 younger brothers yet to educate, that further years of education for Edith were not possible. In 1896, she married Norman Galt, a cousin of her older sister's husband, Alexander, and owner of Galt Jewelers in Washington, D.C.
All my family were devoted to Norman, and no one could have been lovelier than he to each and every one of them.
In January 1908, after a brief illness, Norman Galt died.
I was left with an active business either to maintain or to liquidate, upon which all of my income was dependent. I had no experience.
She turned to the shop's manager, Henry Bergheimer, and they worked together to continue the business. She traveled frequently to Europe with her sister or a friend, and was the first woman in Washington to own and drive an electric car. President Wilson's wife, Ellen, passed away during his first term in office. Helen Bones, cousin of the president, moved to the White House as hostess, and Edith was asked to befriend her. It was through their friendship that she met the president in the White House hallway one March evening, and shared dinner and drives in the White House car on several occasions.
For the first time, I had felt the warm personality of Woodrow Wilson. A boy-like simplicity dwelt in the background of an official life, which had to be content with the husks of formal contacts when starving for the bread of human companionship.
For Wilson, the friendship ripened quickly into love, and he proposed to her in early May.
"Oh, you can't love me, for you don't really know me," I told him. "And it is less than a year since your wife died." He told me, "Little girl, in this place life is not measured by weeks or months or years, but by deep human experiences. And since her death, I have lived a lifetime of loneliness and heartache." I told him if it had to be yes or no at once, it would have to be no.
By September, With America's entry into World War I ever more likely, and the pressures on the president growing day by day, Edith changed her answer.
He told me, "I have no right to ask you to help me by sharing this load that is almost breaking my back, for I know your nature, and you might do it out of sheer pity." I put my arms around his neck and said, "Well, if you won't ask me, I will volunteer and be ready to be mustered in as soon as can be."
She pledged him her love and her allegiance. When war broke out in 1917, Mrs. Wilson became the president's confidant, decoding war messages and coming up with names for hundreds of new Navy ships. She wore thrift clothing, observed food rationing, minimized White House entertainments. A small flock of sheep grazed on the White House lawn to replace the efforts of groundskeepers sent to fight. The sheep's wool was donated to the Red Cross and auctioned, raising nearly $100,000 for the war. She was first honorary president of the Girl Scouts in 1917, beginning a tradition for future First Ladies, and creating a role model inspiring young girls. After the war, she traveled with Wilson to Europe for the Peace Conference, becoming the first First Lady to become involved in international diplomacy. In 1919, a stroke left the president paralyzed. The future of the peace treaty and League of Nations, the peace organization he had done so much to promote, hung in the balance.
Doctors told me, if he resigns, the greatest incentive to recovery is gone, and as his mind is as clear as crystal, he can still do more with even a maimed body than anyone else. And so began my stewardship. I tried to digest and present in tabloid form the issues that had to go to the president. I myself never made a single decision regarding the disposition of public affairs. The only decision that was mine was what was important and what was not, and the very important decision of when to present matters to my husband.
Wilson recovered, but the peace treaty was never ratified, and the League of Nations would remain a dream. He died in 1924. Mrs. Wilson spent the remainder of her life promoting her husband's legacy and his vision for world peace. Edith Bolling Wilson was a caregiver all her life, beginning with her grandmother. After her father died, her mother lived close by, and she took care of 3 siblings who lived with her. She outlived them all. Her last visit to Wytheville was in 1960 to dedicate stained glass windows at St. John's Episcopal Church in honor of her parents. She died on December 28, 1961, on Woodrow Wilson's birthday, and is buried with him at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C.